Detroit. You were not our primary audience. We assume that you already know a bit more about Detroit than we'll ever know. However, there are people in Los Angeles, New York, San Francisco, Wichita, St. Louis, Atlanta, Dallas, and indeed all over the world. Time Magazine reaches millions and millions of people around the world. I think that they're certainly more aware of what the realities and some of the nuances of the Detroit story were. And I would also point out to you that some of these sort of shocking negative stories that we ran that so offended everyone in Detroit, oh, they came out here to do this, and now they're just going to do that, we already know all that, we're tired of that. Well, that's what gets the attention of the people outside the world, outside the city, go, oh my God, things are really shocking there. Then you have their attention, and you can start to walk them through the reality. So I think I don't know if we shook up anybody, but we certainly educated a lot of people about it.
I think we certainly caused a lot of our competitors between the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post to pay significantly, just much more attention to Detroit, actually setting orders to kind of the coming city, its potential recovery in ways they have not in years. So I think that's one consequence of our presence here.
We definitely increased the scrutiny of Detroit worldwide in most places, whether that's good or bad.
This card that I have here, I think, plays into what you're talking about. It says you've talked about the problems, which we know. Talk about the solutions that you think will correct the problems.
Well, we have, I wish Mr. Oprah were here because he's our resident solution philosopher. But you know, we come down very much, we're not here to, we didn't come out here to describe, we didn't come out here to save the city or pretend like we know what would work or to have the solution. But those of us who think about these things and talk to the people who think about it seem to come down to the idea that Detroit can't keep pretending to be as big a city as it used to be and survive economically or socially, that you can't keep providing all these services in such a spread out way to so many different constituencies. And how you solve that is anybody's guess, but you know, you've read all the stories long before we got here about how your fire department can't get here. And I will say though that the first night I spent in the house, Stephen goes off jogging, leaves me there, forgets to tell me the alarm code. And I go outside, set off the alarm, which, did you pull that one at everybody? Which attracted no attention at all in the neighborhood. But then I want to say the police showed up pretty quickly, much to my chagrin. I was thinking, well, the alarm's going off, it's Detroit, at least the cops won't come. They were right on me. Sir, do you own this house? Well, sort of. You live here? Well, it's complicated. Can you turn off that alarm? Not really.
And you were not the first guy they heard all that from.
Right,
no. Okay, John, this is for you too. Any thoughts about transitioning this project to a local nonprofit or school that could continue reporting on the city?
Well, no, but we're not abandoning coverage of Detroit, and we'll be much more interested in it and much more informed about it and much better position to cover it. We are selling the house, and regardless of what we sell it for, we're guaranteeing a $100,000 donation to 4 charities that are deeply involved with the youth of the city. You know, we've made some contacts with our high school intern bloggers, and I'm sure they'll stay in touch with us. But we're not formally transferring this project. This was always envisioned as a 1-year project, and it had no greater purpose than what it was, which was to cover Detroit intensely for a year and to a huge audience through a broad landscape of magazine. And in that regard, we succeeded. Now, whether we met your expectations or anyone else's, I don't know, but we're happy that we accomplished what we set out to do.
Okay, Stephen, this is for you. You've covered New Orleans for 4 months after Hurricane Katrina. you see any differences in the people, underlined, trying to rebuild the two cities?
Yes. I mean, there's some key differences between how New Orleans rebounded and Detroit's rebound aspirations. New Orleans, the decline of New Orleans has been happening over almost 2 centuries. Katrina quickened the process. The internet, during Katrina, pushed it onto the world's radar, and frankly embarrassed the country, as we should have been, to our response to Katrina. Detroit's decline has happened over a period of 70 years. It's been easy for the country to forget about it, and that's unfortunate. And I think part of our presence here has been to remind the country that Detroit is here and is trying to come back. 2 key things that I think that are happening in both cities is the presence of philanthropic organizations that previously could not play a significant role in cities. New Orleans, the recovery, especially on the schools front, I think is in large part foundations. Will it work in Detroit?
The time issue there, I think you're exactly right. There's an old adage about frog. If you put a frog in a pot of boiling water, he jumps out so quickly it doesn't get burned. If you put him in cool water and slowly turn up the heat, by the time he's supposed to jump out, he's already cooked. And what happened, you're right, in New Orleans it all seemed like such an instant, so everybody came attentively. In Detroit it's been so we fallen some walls and people sleep over the years. I got a quick question for Bobby here. This is from one of our students that I'd like to get in. Not necessarily Detroit specific, but to journalism. What is the most significant difference in journalism as we practice it here in journalism, like the project we're talking about, in journalism overseas?
It's hard to sort of to take a broad brush view of what journalism overseas is. I mean, it's very different in England than it is in India, or it's very different in Japan. Maybe it speaks to something about the openness of America, that journalism here has the opportunity to go places where in other countries it doesn't always do. People are much more candid in America, and this is true, perhaps not so much of politicians, but that is true everywhere. But it is true of business, it is true of social and educational leaders, it's true of ordinary people. I may be kidding myself, but I have a sense that living here 2 or 3 years as a journalist, I know much more about America than I did living 7 years in Hong Kong, for instance. That has something to do with how, that's cultural almost, as culture, what was cultural has become institutional. It doesn't occur to people to hide facts unless they've done something terribly wrong, it's a different matter. But most of the time, in most interactions, journalists in America will find people willing to tell them what they need to know to do a story. Whereas that is not really true internationally. I mean, even in, let's say, in the United Kingdom, which has perhaps an older journalistic tradition, you have a tradition where journalists are almost in conflict with the people that they interview.
Yeah.
And they have to go that extra mile and be belligerent to get information. I think here we're somewhat spoiled in that respect. Didn't get information much easier. So if I was starting out as a journalist, this is where I would like to start it out, because I think I'd learn much more, much faster, because people would be much more open and much more helpful.
I would start right here, because fortunately in Detroit, we have not had any politicians who tried to hide things.
Here's our very last question, and this is a very quick one. Would you vote American or Lafayette Coney Island?
Security.
I like both. That's really
That was diplomatic. Well, folks,